Welcome back to Aging with Purpose, where we celebrate women 40 and over who are ready to live boldly, explore freely, and create unforgettable moments. Today, we have a very special guest whose story and work are powerful testaments to resilience and reclaiming one's life. Please join me in welcoming Tiffany Stepney. Now, Tiffany is a multifaceted entrepreneur, a licensed Maryland realtor, a mental health advocate, and the executive assistant of the Eudaimonia Project Incorporated. And that's a nonprofit that's dedicated to wellness and resilience. Beyond her professional accolades, Tiffany has a profound personal mission. After her own journey of overcoming grief in a narcissistic relationship, she has dedicated herself to helping other women heal, set crucial boundaries, and reclaim their power. She is a true example of using life's challenges as a catalyst for purpose. Tiffany, it's an absolute honor to welcome you here with us today to share with my audience.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so honored to be here, and I love your platform. It's great, and I am just so happy to be here and share whatever knowledge that I can just to help people. That's my mission in life is, if I can just help one person, then that's the goal.
Awesome. So you turned your personal journey into a mission to help others. For our audience who may be just starting to recognize that they're in a difficult relationship, what were the key signs for you to that made you realize that you were with a narcissist?
Well, and it's very interesting to say the least, because women, we're raised, we're strong, we're resilient, things like that. However, when you're in a relationship that's what you think is nurturing and fulfilling, and you think, oh, this person just checks off all the lists, all the marks on my list, and you don't realize it until you've had a chance to kind of get to a point where you're questioning yourself and self-doubting, and then you're like, wait a minute, this is happening to me. And that's exactly what happened. I was love bombed. I was made to feel like I was so special, like I was the only girl in the world that this person wanted to be with. And honestly, it's a great feeling. Who doesn't want to be loved and cherished and things like that? So you're all for it. Then as time progresses, the true colors come out, and things are just manipulated in such a way that you don't even realize that you're being manipulated. You're gaslit. When you do speak up and start to question, it's an argument, and it turns as if you were the one that was wrong, or you're crazy, or you're just making stuff up, or you're tripping, and things like that. And you listen to it, and then you sit back and you're like, maybe I am overreacting. Maybe I am. So the self-doubting, the self-questioning all the time, when you're by yourself, that this is how I feel when this person did X, Y, and Z. And then when you go and try to talk to them about it, it gets totally twisted around, and it was not the outcome that you expected. So that's the main warning sign, is when you're questioning yourself and that self-doubt, because we all have, I call it the inner voice. And when the bells and whistles are going off and you're like, wait a minute, something's not right. And then when you go to confront, and then they twist it around and gaslight, and then you go back and you're like, maybe I was, just making things up. And no, you were not. You always go with that inner voice. Always, there's a saying, trust your gut. And it is the truth. You have to trust your gut. A lot of times we think, oh, well, maybe I am overreacting. I'll give them a chance. Maybe things will change, that kind of thing. And the reality is, no, it's not. Unfortunately, as much as we love, things can change, but in a situation like that, usually it's not, unfortunately. And so you have to really come to grips with yourself to say, okay, I know this is what's happening. I can either A, go with it and continue to feel the way I do, or I can walk away. And a lot of times we don't want to walk away because we feel like we've invested time and our emotions, and it hurts. Walking away from something, especially walking away from someone you love, it hurts. And to realize that that person didn't love you the way you love them, that's a hurting feeling. So we have to come to grips with, yes, it's going to hurt. Yes, the time invested, you feel like it's wasted, but I don't look at it as wasted time. I look at it as learning time. So, we learn, the more we learn, the more we can grow, the more we can start to set boundaries to know, I don't like the way this made me feel. Therefore, I'm not going to allow that again. If someone is belittling me or making me feel small, and I know that I have big emotions, and, I'm an overall good person, and, strong and intelligent, things like that. Enough to not let someone knock you down to that point, because honestly, it has nothing to do with you, but more so with them. So that's what I tell people, that it's not you, it's
Yeah,
them.
from what I understand is they actually seek out people, the good people, because that's who they could do their, I guess you could say their gaslighting and everything on.
Yeah.
So how did your experience of healing from this relationship redefine your sense of self and purpose moving forward?
Yes. So, and I'm glad you brought that up about the narcissist seeking out, those, because I look at it as they see your bright light
Hmm.
and they want to dim it. And you would think, oh, someone sees a bright light, they would be drawn to it so that they can shine bright as well. But no, they want to dim that light. And so some affirmations that I tell myself, everything is positive. I'm high vibrating. I attract, that's what, all that is good for me. If it doesn't bring me peace, then I don't want it. And so, when you're in that relationship and you're constantly in like a turmoil or an uncomfortable situation, that's not peace. So have to do away with it.
Yeah. So that's okay. And you're a big advocate for boundary setting for women, especially those who have been caregivers and people pleasers, a good person,
Mhm.
their whole lives. How does setting healthy boundaries, what does that look like?
So for me, setting those healthy boundaries is knowing, yes, I know that for me, I naturally just want to help people. If someone presents something to me, I'm in gotta fix it mode. So what I have to do is I have to step back and say, one, did they ask for my help, or am I just naturally just jumping in, wanting to help, taking on their issues? So that's one, to take a step back and say, did they ask for my help? And then two, if they did, assess it and see if it really is good for you. Because yes, we want to help everyone, but we can't. The reality is that we cannot help everyone, especially if they don't want to help themselves. So you definitely can't help those who don't want to help themselves. So that's the other thing. And then three, I always go back to that inner voice. What is that inner voice saying? And you have to kind of discern that inner voice. Is it something that you want to do, or is it something that you should do? So, that's something that, we as individuals have to work on and realize if it really is meant for us to do it. So,
Hmm. And I guess I want to clarify with the audience also, a narcissistic relationship can also occur with family members, your mom,
yes.
your dad, your cousin. I got a few in my family.
Oh, yes. And coworkers too, and bosses, supervisors. I
Hmm.
worked for a narcissist, and oh my goodness, we were talking about the relationship, like with a romantic relationship, but with a working relationship, I honestly think it's worse because, from a romantic relationship, you can easily walk away. You could be like, you know what, I'm breaking up with you. But unless you have another job
Yeah.
lined up waiting for you, it's not as easy to walk away from a narcissistic boss.
Yeah.
And that right there, and I've worked with a narcissist, and it can be miserable if you don't set those boundaries. So for instance, with my boss, he would think that, I worked a 9 to 5. So my hours are 9 to 5. So anything outside of that, that's my personal time. I would get messages, emails, saying that this was ready to be sent, or this can go, or have you reviewed this report yet? And I'm looking at my clock like,
Mhm.
not to sound like that movie, but it's like my office hours are from 9 to 5. And so before I realized that that was a narcissistic work relationship, I would jump at every email. I would answer this, and it didn't matter if it was 9 p.m. Because I felt like I had to answer.
Mhm.
And then I got to a point, and it's like, one, this is outside of office hours. Two, I'm not being paid for this. And three, this, I have to protect my peace, like, because the more I would do, the more they would expect.
Yeah.
So I set my healthy boundaries. And at first I would be courteous and say, hi, I haven't looked at this. I'll look at it in the morning when I'm in the office. But then it was so bad, because even if I would send that message, then they would still respond. So then it got to a point of, I'm just not going to respond. I'll respond during my office hours. And so that's how I had to set those boundaries. And, my mother used to say, I know it's an old saying, I can show you better than I can tell you. So,
Yeah, and
so
mine is also you got to train people how to treat you. It's like,
yes. Right. And you don't want to think of them as an animal, because when we think of train, we think of training a dog or something like that. But it's true. You have to train people. You have to show them, like, this is my boundary. If
mhm.
it's outside of office hours, do not email me,
Yeah, yeah.
So,
So a narcissistic relationship can be really isolating. Um, Share some ideas or tips for our audience, like how can, besides, of course, getting a coach like yourself, someone to help them understand what they're dealing with, but how can community help them?
so I would say one is, because a lot of times in a romantic narcissistic relationship, they they tend to separate you from your friends. They'll say things like, "Oh, your friend's a hater," or your friends, that they're not really your friends, or things like that, and try to put that doubt into your friendships. But I would say community, like our friends, our sister circles, things like that. Your real friends, they're going to be there before the relationship and after the relationship. And so a lot of times, you have that go-to person you can go to, and then you have that friend that's just going to be like, look, I know you don't want to hear it right now, but and you need friends like that, because sometimes they can help you, like, wake you up, if you will. So it's important to have at least one or two close girlfriends, or someone you can confide in, that you can go to. And and then the friends, like, if you know someone that's in a narcissistic relationship, you can just reach out and just say, hey, if you want to go for coffee, you want to go for lunch, get them out of that environment, so that they can basically have a chance to breathe, wake up, and listen to you. Depending on how far they are, but it's, at least if you're planting that seed, you can say, hey, I'm here for you, when you need. I know it might be tough, or I know you may not can talk when you're around such and such, but just know I'm a text away, I'm a call away, anything like that. So we have to keep those networks together, so that we can stay connected.
Mhm. And for those who may have a religious or a spiritual belief, how can they utilize that foundation?
I'm glad you asked that, because I was raised in the church. So the first thing, when I realized that I was in a narcissistic relationship, I prayed and I asked God to cut the soul tie. I wanted to be free from that. I didn't want to feel that bondage. So for me, I prayed, I studied, and it's so interesting, because sometimes when we're going through things, we may get a message, like, a preacher might have a sermon, and the message seems to be geared right towards you. And that's how you know Okay, God, I hear you. You're talking to me. Okay, this is confirmation. I need to get out of this. And so, if you have a mentor in your church or a spiritual person that you can confide in, definitely for me, I know, prayer works. And so I go and I study, I pray, and I also I circle myself around. I call it my sister circle. We go out for tea, and that's healing within itself. And then for me, I turn that pain into purpose. So I've written, and I used to journal. I still journal, but then I said, you know what? Someone needs to hear this story because people may think they're the only ones going through it, and so they may be embarrassed to speak up. So that's when I started writing the books because, transparency can get the message across. Like it happened to me. Yes, at first I was sad and upset and maybe even embarrassed, but then I said, you know what? People have to know that they're not alone. So, I'm willing to share my story. And it's so interesting because when I have shared my stories, I've actually sat down with so many women, and without even putting a name to the face, we say the lines that they said to us. And it's like, it was the same person it was the same lines, but different faces. And so I'm like, wow, you are not alone. So you realize it, and awareness is the key.
Yeah.
Once you're aware, you can grow
And I
from
want to
it.
touch on a couple of things we mentioned. Religion.
Mhm.
Narcissists will use your religion. I had a friend of mine only through therapy because her friends, we had all been telling her to get out of the situation, but he kept using her religion, the fact that she made that vow to keep her there in that toxic marriage. But when she finally went to therapy, she realized that he had already broken his vow just in mistreating her. So the therapist was smart enough to use her religion to help her escape, basically, and referred a book, because we were talking about your book. She read, I don't know the title of the book, but reading the book as well from the
Mhm.
friends, the therapist, reading the book, all of that helped her to see what type of relationship she was in, and she was able to escape. But finally, my final question is, what would be your most important piece of advice for women who feel stuck and need to figure out how to leave a toxic relationship?
Okay. Well, the first thing I would say is really sit down and assess the situation. How does it make you feel? At the end of the day, when you've given all you can, do you feel empty? Is that person filling you up? Are they replenishing you? Are they pouring into you? If the answer is no, you have your answer. Then the second question is, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to stay and continue this path, or are you going to break free and have peace? So it's really a soul searching thing that you have to do, and you have to have that honest conversation with yourself, because that's the only way that you're going to, one, be aware of it, and then two, decide what you're going to do from that point forward.
Yeah. Yeah. I have another friend. She said that she knew 2 years before they actually split, she was leaving. And she plotted it out because she knew he was going to come after her financially, etc. So, although they spent 10 years in court, she
Wow.
wound up, if she hadn't planned, she'd probably still be in court right now. But
And that's interesting you said that, because that was smart what she did, because I know someone too that was in a narcissistic marriage, and they planned it out. And sometimes you have to plan it out. And the other part is, don't announce what you're going to do. Because when you say, I'm leaving you, then that's when oh, baby, please, we can work it, and please give me another chance. No, if you've made it up in your mind that you're leaving and you're done, you have to do that. That's a smart move. I tell everyone, plan it out. You have to line it up, because again, your finances are tied into it. If you have a home, things like that. So you have to plan all of those things out. So, and don't announce your move.
With anything, really.
Yes, that's right. You just
Yeah.
do it because when you put those words out there, if someone who hears it and they don't have your best intentions at heart, then they could be secretly plotting your demise. So you definitely don't want to let everyone know your move and just plan it out and do it. Now, of course, if you have, someone you can confide in that you trust and things like that, because they may can offer you some assistance like, okay, well, when you leave that marriage, you're going to need a place to live. So you can stay with me for a while, things like that, and, and help get through it. So I'm glad you mentioned that.
So please share how our audience members can learn more about what you do. Share what you do to help women. Mention where they can find your book. I'll also add links and things like that for everyone.
Yes, absolutely. So they can find me on my website, www.tiffanystepney.com. I have books on Amazon. I've listed them in my website as well. So I have quite a few books. And, the beauty of it is I just started a year ago writing books. So, I'm on a roll. I have more in my head that they're coming, and they all deal with relationships, true relationships. Basically, I've turned my stories into books, and maybe one day, maybe even to a movie. But for now, they're books, and I help others share their story because there is definitely healing in storytelling. So they can go on my website. They can look on Amazon, type in my name, and you'll see I've also co-written books with other authors as well. And then if they want to reach out, they can always shoot me a text at my cell, which is 240-603-9024. I'm very responsive. So if someone has a question and they shoot me a text, I will definitely respond. So.
Okay, perfect. We'll have to have you back because I feel that being in a toxic relationship, whether it's family, love, can really affect everything else. It's like
Oh,
that's the
yes.
peace is your foundation.
Peace. That's right. That is the foundation, and not be afraid to walk in your peace, even if it disrupts other people. Like you mentioned, family members. Family members, they will definitely like, what do you mean? We're family. Blah, blah. And it's like, if again, my motto is, if it doesn't bring me peace, I don't want it.
Exactly. Tiffany, thank you for joining us and helping women heal, doing what you do. My audience members, thank you for joining us today. Remember to hit like, subscribe, and share with your friends for more lifestyle information and so that we can just help other women our age and above live their best life. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
This episode is sponsored by the Knee Pain Reduction Strap from HealMyKnees.com. If knee pain is slowing you down, whether it's during your daily walk, a workout, or just climbing the stairs, relief is here. The Knee Pain Reduction Strap is a simple, comfortable solution that's designed to target pain at the source and support natural movement. It's lightweight, easy to wear, and already making a difference for people who are looking to stay active without pills or bulky braces. Visit healmyknees.com to learn more and see how this new innovation can help you move with confidence.